Why developers should not rely on QA for quality. Uncle Bob, what's he saying? Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I am a KMP developer, tech support. They promised they're coming out to close it up on Tuesday, so all we have to do is cross our fingers. I'm going to be responding to this video that I saw. I haven't watched this yet from Uncle Bob talking about why developers should not rely on QA for quality. So back when I started getting into software development, QA was always a separate department. This was the industry standard. Was your developers are so valuable that they could not spend time on testing, and almost all testing back then was manual. Now, some of the developers had developed on their own little methods and methodologies for testing their functions, and they would test them on their own machine. But there was very rare you'd find. I knew one person that had like test suites that would go through all the things, but he was writing something called Supercard, which is a HyperCard clone coming from Apple. So it was a programming language and all kinds of functions and stuff. So it was kind of easy to do that, to run through every single function and make sure everything worked. But there was other parts of the app he didn't have that ability yet, because the applications just weren't set up for this from the start, and it wasn't on people's minds. Weren't thinking about it. They said, "Oh, we'll just have people test it," or they tested it themselves. And some of the apps were in the starting to come at that time for microcomputers. The company I was working at when they were doing this at the time, you could test the whole thing with one person, or have a team of people. It was simple enough that somebody could run through the whole thing and manually test the application and be fairly certain that it's working, but not all of it. So, and that's just the time. This is how things were done at the time. There was no automated anything. People had dreams about it. People had talked about it. I know people always talked about having some machine with a mouse hooked up to it, and they would have some script to run it, and they had macros and things that people would do stuff like that. But in general, everything was done manually and by separate people. So the developer would try and like test it themselves. You think that they would try and test it as much as they could, but they the people who do the developing, if they don't get out in the habit of like doing full test suites and having another department that's going to be doing it for them, they get real bad out of bad habits. They just start, and then there's bad and juju between. It's like when you can't reproduce it, like it gets kicked over. It starts to become a paperwork thing. And so like talking to each other, this paperwork goes back and forth. It's goofy. No paper, no
I
repro.
expect that we will not dump on QA. QA is not the tool we are going to use to find bugs in our system. QA.
I mean, that is useful to have somebody out there testing this thing as a dedicated thing, but you can't be relying on them. They shouldn't be. I think it's just like a stopgap measure until QA can be brought up to speed, so we can automate these tests. Like, there's got to be someone that's going like kind of like. I can see that as being a role, is like if you're writing the tests and writing these test suites, but not actually clicking manually. That's a very bad use of time.
Should find nothing. Do you have a QA group? You use QA? Who uses QA?
I mean, most people do.
Good. Why do we have QA departments?
Because developers don't want to spend the time to go through, or it's not in the budget for them to go through and write the test suites, because it takes forever. It's not just a happy path. That's the thing. I've had to explain this to so many like business people. It's like, the happy path is just, yes, of course, that's the easy thing. What's the unhappy path? All these error conditions and states and things that can go wrong. And man, early on, there was no way to simulate that stuff. So, and people weren't writing the software to be simulated that way, because it was just getting the thing to fit on a floppy was hard enough. Let's keep going.
What would motivate a company to invest in a separate group whose job it is to detect whether or not the developers had done their jobs? Apparently, the developers hadn't done their jobs.
I mean, but also the tools that we were giving, let's be honest, it's not like we knew to do these things, because the tools didn't even exist. We were just impressed to get anything on the screen working. Remember, this is like when people were just getting the desktops and GUIs and everything going. We were just impressed with getting that going. It's sort of like, today, if we got like some kind of 4D glasses, it'd be like, holy shit, 4D. It's like, well, now I got the problem with the It's like, yeah, that's like 2 steps down the line. And so, yeah, so it's not like we were being negligent. It's just like a lot of the systems just weren't set up to be done in that way. And people just saw it, also just trying to do the division of labor, and It kind of had been done like that in most other places, and that's just was just the common industry standard at the time. Not that people talked about it. People were like, oh, we should automate this stuff. There's got to be a way to do this. Like, well, maybe one day. It's like that kind of stuff.
Why would a company create a QA group? Well, because they got burned so badly by not having one. Why did
Well,
they?
I mean, you have to at some point. You're gonna have somebody doing that kind of stuff, paying attention to that stuff, or giving your developers time to put that stuff in there, and it takes forever to do that stuff. It's like, is it done yet? It's like, man, how many unhappy paths do you want to do? How thorough do you want this to be? How fragile do you want this to be, or not fragile? How the other opposite of fragile? It's like, something that's robust where we can make changes to the colors of some of the buttons, and it's not going to crash the whole test suite. Or we have to rewrite the whole thing. Like, oh, we have to rewrite 65 tests now. It's like, can we not do that? Is there a way we could not do that?
Burn badly because the developers didn't do their jobs. It's the developers.
It's not that. It's not that. He's saying he's so. I don't know if he's trying to be controversial or trying to I gotcha. He's trying to shock people or something, and to make oh no, I did the job right. And he does push the TDD pretty hard, so maybe that's what he's trying to do, trying to get people on those courses, doing some more sales here.
Jobs to make sure the system works. QA can serve a useful function, that's fine, but the function they should serve is not at the back end of the process waiting for the load to be delivered.
I mean, when is the code ready, dude? I mean, they could be designing test suites to verify this stuff, but it's all in flux. So it's they kind of do have to do it at the end. Like, how are they going to do it before the code's written, sir? Let's keep going.
The function of QA is to specify how the system ought to behave. QA.
Well, I don't know what departments you're talking about. They're usually told this is how the system is. Someone else has designed the system. They're not going to be designing the system. They're just going to verify the system is working as it looks like it's supposed to work. They're usually not integral to the design process. They kind of should be, especially if they're taking calls. If QA is also tech support, if you can go back and forth between those two things, oh, you'll have a killer team there. But man, it's got the developers also really need to be in the loop. These all have to be on the same team. Really, is really what is how it actually has to happen with cross-functional teams. And it's good if the developer has to do a QA run. Well, you're not. We're gonna take the hit on your performance, and you're gonna do a full QA test suite, go all the way through it, and see how it works. It's like, I don't want to. You have to, because this is how we get this stuff better, and you're gonna be the one that's gonna help fix this test suite afterwards, because it gets ridiculous.
People have been telling us this for decades. Nobody pays any attention to them. We don't want a bunch of people at the back end running tests, executing tests like they are computers. We don't want a bunch of people.
I mean, there has to be some of that, sir. I don't know how we can get away or get around it. Either the developers are going to do it, or we're going to have I guess the QA people should be trying to figure out ways of doing automated tests, which is we have lots more tools now, so maybe that's a better use of time and upskill those people. But I don't know. It seems like a lot of companies just still have to have somebody that's going to be clicking on the button somewhere, some human somewhere, trying this thing out and making sure it's operational. Because there's all these little edge cases, all these like YouTube's full of them. Like especially the mobile apps, it's totally full of these little things all over the place. If you're not a human, you're not going to catch them.
Back there, has anybody looked at a manual test plan? You know what kind of hell that is?
It's pretty bad.
Enter XYZZY into the password field.
Right, we should be like happy path stuff, or specific stuff that can't be tested for some reason, or needs to be verified so that we can feel good because we don't want to get burned like we did 3 weeks ago. That kind of stuff.
Click OK. Did the login screen come up? Check here. Yes, this is your job for the rest of your life.
No, I mean, it's a job. It's work. There's a lot of stuff like that. Yes, you can try to automate some of that stuff. Maybe automate the happy path. Maybe automate some of the unhappy path stuff. But at some point, someone should click through the app and try it out, and don't even have a test plan. Just go through and play it or try it out or mess around. Be interested in it. Yes, but it's also, this is a job. It's not supposed to be fun times all the time. It's people get paid to work. It's better than flipping burgers, man. What the hell?
Right? That's awful. And by the way, what happens?
Is it better than swabbing toilets? Come on.
To QA. Do you think the beast actually?
Some people love it. Some people like doing that checklist. Some people like to go through. They're the maintainer type. The three gods, the three Hindu gods. You know what I'm talking about. All right, so there are people in this preserver type. It's most people actually. Developers are in the destroyer creator types. They're both at the same time. But there's a lot of people out here that would like to have a job that they can have that kind of job security where they just come in and do the one thing. So I mean, don't look down on that stuff, man. That's kind of, I don't know. It's a little bit classist, or I don't know what it is. You kind of maybe a little too privileged. I'm not sure what the word is.
Delivers the load on time? Do you think that developers give the QA folks enough time to actually test the system? Hell no.
It takes as long as it takes, man. It takes as long as it takes. Well, what are you trying to say? I'm not.
Do you think the date changes just because QA doesn't have enough time to run all their tests? No. So who's under the most pressure in this environment? What team is under the most stress, the most pressure to get something
They all
done?
are.
And it's always QA. They're always sitting at the end. They're always under hellish pressure. And in that context, we're going to guarantee.
I mean, yes, that is part of it. If you're trying to push out the releases in some sort of weird, strange cadence, but like, that's when you should be trying to automate this stuff, so we're not having to panic so hard. But you need someone to make sure this stuff is correct. Well, it all depends on what you're doing, right? Depends on the industry. Maybe it's okay to push it out. Maybe we can push it out and test it while it's out there, and still run tests if it has to go through so quickly, and still poke at it. And if we find something, we roll it back. This isn't. It's not so black and white.
Quality. It's absurd. QA doesn't belong at the end of the process. QA belongs at the beginning of the process.
I mean, it brings all parts of the phases, all sequences, all parts of it. I mean, but these big companies, they want to separate these things out. I get it. I understand they want to, but it's not really a human thing. You don't get the best quality stuff, and eventually this stuff does grind to a halt and has to be, you have to restart someplace else. So that, these are kind of unsustainable, and some of these questions are open questions. A lot of it's just trade secrets, like how much, and also wanting to pay for that thing if it's part of your priority to make that a thing. If it's not, then it's not going to make money to make we're not going to have the value enough to have that kind of thing resource there. This is all money based, man. I don't know. These aren't perfect solutions. Come on, there's all trade-offs all over the place.
Developers guarantee quality of their code, not QA.
Do we? How do we guarantee it? It's software. If it's not the right thing, we'll fix it. Or you are aware of the halting problem. Even the most perfect programmer would never be able to guarantee. You're trying to do something that's mathematically impossible, Uncle Bob. What are you talking about?
Wait, QA should find nothing. The QA tests.
I mean, there's always bugs, man. What are you talking about? The QA should find nothing. There's always something wrong. Does this guy work at a company at all? Has he looked at a backlog? Is he just do circuits and books and and consulting and pontificating? There's always bugs. Everything has bugs. The whole thing's buggy as hell. What are you talking about, man?
Should find nothing. You release a system, you hand it off to QA, you expect them to find nothing. If they find
No, their job is to find stuff, and there's all stuff all over the place, everywhere. But is it worth it enough to fix it? How much of it is it to investigate that particular thing? Is it really a showstopper? Come on, man.
Find something. Your reaction ought to be, how the hell did that get loose?
Does this guy for real? It's constant. There's bugs all over the place, man. Maybe this is more sales pitch for his, like, if you use the Uncle Bob way, you'll never have to deal with that again. The bugs will be a thing of the past. Like, are you serious, man?
How the hell did that bug get through there? We got to do something to prevent that again, because we never want QA to find it. QA should wonder why the heck they're stuck at the end of the process, because they want to go to the beginning of the process anyway.
All right, man. He's all right. He's okay, I guess. Uncle Bob's okay. I mean, at least he's bringing some of this stuff. I'm trying it out, but it's like the way he talks about it is like so nuanced, so not nuanced, and like people who I know are like really love the guy think that he's talking some kind of gospel. It's like, dude, these are just suggestions. And the way he says it, it's like, okay, it's also a sales pitch. He's selling books, he's selling courses, he's selling certifications. He's sales. You're in a sales pitch, man. So yeah, he's gonna promise the world and the sun, the moon, the stars. Yes. And it's like, well, no, he's not gonna lie about it. It's like not lying. It's just like You want his way to do it if it's vibing with you what you're doing? Call the 1-800. All right, I'll leave the link in the thing below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff.